How many video games are there about racing cars? It's not just a lot. It's like thousands. Excluding the mobile market, I found over 3,000 video games solely dedicated to cars. Assetto Corsa, the Burnout series, BeamNG, the Need for Speed series, the Crew, Twisted Metal, the Gran Turismo series, the Forza series, Car Parking Simulator, Fast and the Furious Crossroads. They made a game? When the fuck? And we can't forget the classics like Monster Truck Madness, San Francisco Rush, and Cruisin' USA. Honestly, I could do an entire video on why Cruisin' USA is like the greatest racing game of all time, and I will if this video gets enough likes. Now compare that to motorcycle video games. There are maybe a few hundred legit titles, right? MotoGP, Road Rash, Ride TT Isle of Man. And that is being generous. Obviously, there are games that tackle both, right? You have games like Grand Theft Auto, Saints Row, Cyberpunk, etc. But even with those games in mind, cars still outweigh motorcycles 10 to 1 in the digital world. But why?
Why?
But why? I love motorcycles. I think a lot of people do too. So why are they such a small percentage of gaming? And more importantly, why do they never feel right? Like the physics, I mean. It doesn't matter if I'm playing GTA San Andreas or Isle of Man. It just never feels like a real bike. Now through the years, technology has gotten really good at simulating realistic physics. With games like iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and BeamNG, we can simulate car physics on a molecular level. Traction is dependent on what kind of tires you're running or what their temperature is at. Weather conditions, suspension geometry, and downforce. Realistic damage models for when you crash. Mechanical failures for when you push the car too hard. And that's because these games are community driven. Code written by enthusiasts. Models curated from passion. If it weren't for the love of racing and cars, these games would not exist in this capacity. But what about motorcycles? Surely our community has the same love and passion that the car community has, right? I did the research, and I promise you, it was not the answer that I was expecting. Come on, follow me on this journey. Let's rewind all the way back to 1974, when Atari released Grand Track 10, the first ever racing video game. Not only was it a pioneer in racing, it could technically be seen as the first racing sim. I mean, look at this thing. It's got a steering wheel, it's got the shifter, it's got pedals. In 1974. I can only imagine how good it felt to knock back a couple of beers and hop by the wheel of this thing. In Grand Track 10, you play from a top-down perspective, racing around a single white line track. No AI opponents, no fancy graphics, just you, the track, and your ability to stay in it without spinning out like a drunk toddler in a Power Wheels. This thing wasn't just a video game either. It was a simulator before simulators were a thing. Imagine walking into an arcade in the mid-70s. You see a glowing cabinet with a real steering wheel and real pedals. Hearing the buzz of tires skidding from a CRTV screen. You'd think that the future had just arrived. And it kinda did. Grand Track 10 didn't just kickstart racing games, it laid the foundation for how we enjoy racing games today. Every arcade cabinet with a steering wheel, every home setup with force feedback. It all started here. Following suit, Sega released the first motorcycle video game in 1976, Motocross, but later rebranded to Fonz for the American market. Which was a weird change, right? Like, I felt Motocross was a pretty good name for a motorcycle racing game. Especially the first motorcycle racing game, right? But at the time, the show Happy Days was a major hit, and the Fonz was an icon known as both a rebel and a biker. Now, Japan has always had a strange take on pop culture, especially here in the US, so I guess they just figured that slapping his name and likeness on the side of an arcade cabinet would be more marketable to both arcades and children here in the US.
It's nice, huh?
First of all, bikes are not nice, they're cool.
And with that, it became one of the first licensed character video games. It'd be kind of like if Gran Turismo starred Vin Diesel for some reason. And it worked too. People lined up around the block just so they could say, "Hey," and crash into traffic. Now, the gameplay was nothing crazy compared to today's standards. It was a black and white game where your whole job was to not get hit by cars. Honestly, it's a pretty good representation of what riding is really like, you know? But the magic of Fonz wasn't the game itself. It was how you played it. Not with a joystick or a controller, no. Fixed to the front of the machine were actual handlebars with haptic feedback. In the 70s! What? In reality, they just vibrated when you crash, whatever. What I'm trying to say is the fun wasn't in the graphics, the fun was in the way you played the game. See, in the 70s and 80s, graphics in video games consisted mostly of sprites, 2D images with limited animations. But even then, the games were still a lot of fun. Enduro Racer had you jumping berms and dodging rocks. Excite Bike was a side-scrolling motocross game that, while it was incredibly frustrating, it was still tons of fun. And that main title music? What a banger, dude. Let's listen to this. Some of you guys don't even know that's what that's from. And then came Hang On, which changed everything. This game was a raging success that inspired so many motorcycle games that you've probably never even played. Not only did it feature beautiful graphics, a variety of tracks, and a plethora of motorcycles, it took the Fonz approach and gave the player an interactive controller that would literally shape arcade games for decades. I know we're talking a lot about arcades here, but early on, gaming consoles and computers were really expensive and took up a lot of room. So the only place to play a game that you didn't own was to go to the arcades. Go figure. The arcade version of Hang On came in 2 different cabinets. That's what these things are called, by the way. They're called cabinets. Most arcades opted for the standard cabinet for Hang On because it took up less room and it cost less. And much like the Fonz, the standard cabinet came with the fixed handlebars. But if you opted for the deluxe cabinet of Hang On, you got the bike. The whole bike. And get this, the bike was the controller. This was the first arcade game to ever feature full body motion controls. To take a turn in the video game, you had to lean the bike over in real life. This was groundbreaking. Any arcade that had Hang On and its sequel, Super Hang On, crazy title, had people lining up around the block to drop in their hard-earned quarters like it was laundry day. This was so important and it had so much potential. This was going to be the future. It was immersive gaming and we had it in the 80s. And then came the 90s. Gaming consoles like the PlayStation and the N64 made their way into homes nationwide. And sure, arcade culture was still alive, but at-home gaming was catching up. And as we say down south, things was getting good. Now, I don't have to give you a montage as to why the 90s were great, but let's be real. The 90s were bitchin', dude. The internet was making its way into pretty much every home across the country, and games of this era were amazing. We're just gonna spend a little time here and soak in the glory. Names like Doom, Resident Evil, and GoldenEye were spreading like wildfire. Games introduced depth. It wasn't just about shooting or jumping or racing anymore. It was stories and weapons and characters and worlds. Titles like Half-Life and The Legend of Zelda dragged you into their universe, and they put you in your character's shoes, and you played throughout their lives. And don't even get me started about them Tomb Raider titties, dude. I love me a nice set of perky polygons, you know what I'm saying? But this greatly affected the racing genre as gamers began to expect more. If you were making a game, you had to have a story and characters and a motive to continue progressing in the game. So how the hell do you do that for a racing game? How do you make a Metal Gear Solid or a Chrono Trigger out of a racing game? Because of the shift in the market, we started to see games like Twisted Metal, Vigilantes 8, Road Rash, Need for Speed, F-Zero X, and even Mario Kart take the stage. Vehicular combat was a new genre that brought back racing to the forefront of the gaming world. You got different characters with elaborate backgrounds, different vehicles with stats and attributes. Racing games began to fall under 2 distinct categories: simulation or other. And yeah, even back then, car games were evolving faster than bike games. Daytona USA and Ridge Racer introduced true 3D graphics, crazy speed, and seat-rumbling sound design. Gran Turismo was our first taste at car customization. Tire wear, gear ratio, suspension tuning, it set the standard, literally. But motorcycle games? Still stuck at the arcade. And sure, you had stuff like Motor Racer and Man XTT Superbike keeping the dream alive, but outside of arcades, most bike games didn't get the same development budget, the same polish, or the same love from the players. Gran Turismo let you customize the hell out of your car and tune it. But Motor Racer? You could change your pants, maybe. Don't get me wrong, the game did not have to be entrenched in over-the-top lore to be good. Like, you remember Excite Bike from the beginning of this video? It was like kinda eh. Well, this is its sequel, Excite Bike 64, and it is way better. I spent so much time playing this game as a kid. I remember thinking to myself that the graphics and the sounds were so good, it just could never get any better than this. And don't even get me started about Cruisin' USA. This game is a 10 out of 10. The graphics, the sounds, the flag girls, all 12 pixels of them. Wowza. Everything about this game was an incredible success. The music was perfect. The cars, they felt really good. The scenery seemed so vibrant and real. And the best part? Playing it from an arcade cabinet, with the seats, with the wheel, with the shifter, and the pedals. This was freaking peak. But there was only one thing at the arcade that got my attention more than anything. Motherfucking cybercycles with the leaning bikes. Motherfucking cybercycles with the leaning bikes. Motherfucking cybercycles with the leaning bikes. These newer cabinets were the experience. You weren't just holding a controller. You weren't just steering a wheel or hitting some pedals. You were on the bike. Full body lean, throttle in hand, fans blowing in your face like you're doing 160 down I-75. Games like Man XTT Superbike, Super Hang On, and Cybercycles, motherfucking Cybercycles, weren't just fun. They were a full body workout. You'd lean into corners, gripping those bars for dear life, and try not to yeet yourself in the side of another arcade cabinet like Jurassic Park or some dumb shit, I don't know. The lights, the sounds, the rumble of the fake motorcycle underneath your ass. It was the closest thing I'd ever had to riding a motorcycle. Kids would line up at the arcade, not for the prizes, not for pinball, but for the bikes. These games didn't rely on good physics or realism, but rather fun gameplay. And this is where we begin to see the Great Divide. Enter in the 2000s, what I consider to be the golden era of gaming. If you were a gamer, this was an elite time. We got Gears of War 1 and 2, all the good Halos, all the good Call of Duties, all of the good Grand Theft Autos, Oblivion, Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed. We also got the Need for Speeds, the Burnouts, the Gran Turismos, Motorstorm, MX vs. ATV Unleashed, Speed Kings, Freakstyle, Midnight Club, Dub Edition? Fucking Dub Edition, dude? The games that we got during the 2000s were legendary. There's no other way to put it. And they continued to just get better. Okay, maybe not all of them. Technology was advancing at an explosive rate. Up until now, video games were still really basic. But in the 2000s, they started getting really good at simulating realistic driving physics. Need for Speed Underground gave us street tuning and underglow. And in my opinion, was probably one of the best, if not the best racing game of all time. I mean, the cars, the customization, the gameplay, the music. Oh my God, that main title theme. Mwah. Perfect. Forza started bringing super realistic driving physics, and Gran Turismo 3 was basically a car encyclopedia that you could play. And games like Grand Theft Auto gave us a little bit of everything, right? They gave us racing, they gave us story, combat, customization, the whole sheboing. The games from this decade felt fast and chaotic and alive. You could mod your cars from top to bottom. Huge spoilers, custom paint, underglow, nitrous, engine swaps, you name it. Hell, even games that weren't even automotive adjacent had amazing vehicles. You remember the airboat from Half-Life 2? It wasn't a car, it wasn't a motorcycle, and it wasn't really a boat either. And the whole process went on forever, but we fucking loved it. It was great. Meanwhile, motorcycle games were okay, but never as deep. Taurus Trophy tried to bring the Gran Turismo style of realism to bikes when it comes to customization and tuning, and absolutely props to them for trying, but it just never really took off. And if the game itself wasn't a dedicated motorcycle racing game, developers didn't even try to come close to getting the physics right. I still remember the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas motorcycle stunt compilation videos on like the old YouTube. You know, before they had the like and dislike, they had the 5-star rating system. Man, those were the days. By the way, it's a reminder to leave a like if you're enjoying the video so far. But at the time, the best motorcycle experience gaming could provide was at the arcade, where you could actually use the bikes to turn. But now more than ever, people were getting their gaming fix at home rather than the arcade. And this wasn't like telling your mom that you wanted McDonald's and then she hits you with the "we have McDonald's at home." The games at home were simply better. Arcade games were just too one-dimensional to compete, and eventually we'd start to see their decline in popularity. Because up until now, arcades still had something that your mama's basement didn't. The wheel. That is until Logitech released the first true force feedback steering wheel for video games. Now, technically they released this back in like 1998, but that wasn't like really convenient for my script. And in all fairness, these things didn't really start getting popular till like the mid-2000s when racing sims started becoming a thing. Because sure, the 2000s were the start for at-home racing sims, but their popularity and availability truly began in the 2010s. For me personally, this decade is a hard one to cover, because on one hand, you have some of the most amazing games created of all time. Uncharted 4, God of War, The Last of Us, Cyberpunk, Grand Theft Auto 5, Battlefields 3 and 4, Black Ops 1 and 2. Red Dead Redemption 2, Fortnite, and Minecraft, just to name a few of the most popular games of this decade. Now I know some of you guys are gonna hate on Minecraft and Fortnite, but these are great examples of how developers actually listen to their communities. They provide consistent updates and fresh content for the player to enjoy. Every few weeks, Fortnite changes their game completely with new weapons, new characters, new story, new quests, and Minecraft's ability to be modded and customized and upgraded to fit the player's playstyle, on top of already being an amazing base game, is parallel to none. And to me, that's what makes a video game great, is people that give a shit. Racing games, however, were fighting a completely different fight. Physics engines leveled up big time in just a few years. We got sims like Forza Motorsports 4, Project Cars, Assetto Corsa, and iRacing. Cars were being simulated down to the tire temperature and surface type. You could feel the difference between racing in the wet and racing in the dry. And the modding community? Unreal. You had fan-made tracks, cars scanned with laser precision, online racing leagues, entire esport empires built around racing and video games. But motorcycles?
I mean, it's alright. Overrated as fuck.
We got Ride and Ride 2, MotoGP, TT Isle of Man, games like that. And graphically, these games looked amazing, but kinda handled like hell. I think game developers were torn between making their games as realistic as possible or making them fun. And committing yourself to the sim racing category is absolutely damning if you don't get it right. This is the big debacle. It gets deep, so buckle up, Buttercup. Let's break it down. Sim racing only makes up for a small percentage of video games, roughly 3% of all video games on the market today. And of that 3%, only about 10% of those games are motorcycle specific, meaning that of all video games that are available on the market today, only 0.3 to 0.5% of those are motorcycle specific games. That is an incredibly small percent of an already niche market. And it doesn't stop there. In America, along with most first world countries, motorcycles are outnumbered by cars 25 to 1 on the streets. That means bikers are just a measly 4%. Here in the US, motorcycles are treated as more of like a luxury item than a transportation option. It's something that you get after you buy the big ass truck or the SUV or the sports car. But it's something that you sell when you begin to start a family. And then there's the fear factor. Not the Joe Rogan one, but the fear of crashing and hurting yourself or, dying or whatever. I have had hundreds, if not thousands of conversations with people over the years pertaining to motorcycles, and I've heard the same thing over and over and over again. I'd never get a motorcycle, motorcycle too dangerous. No, I can't be buying that motorcycle, no, they're too damn dangerous. See, my cousin, uncle's brother, sister's mother, cousin, twice removed niece, who was a dog, had a motorcycle and they died. So no, I ain't gonna be buying no motorcycle. Dude, if I had $1 for every time that I had an unsolicited talking to about the dangers of motorcycles, I would buy another motorcycle. But on the other hand, for developing nations, it's the opposite. Countries like Indonesia and Vietnam, motorcycles outweigh cars almost 20 to 1. Now, these streets aren't filled with like H2s or R1Ms or nothing like that. These are mostly like scooters and postie bikes from brands that neither you nor I could pronounce. But you get the picture. However, despite these massive differences, they all share one common trait. None of these people are buying motorcycle racing sims. The guy you see doing 150 down I-20 in nothing but a t-shirt on his 5th hand Gixxer 750 is not racing home to go lay down track times on his Xbox. And the 42-year-old mother of 12 from India riding a tuk-tuk isn't either. A game that is dedicated to harnessing the beautiful symphony that is riding a motorcycle that then tries to convey that feeling of power and fear and adrenaline with just a few buttons just doesn't work the same as a car game. The undeniable truth is, realistic physics are just not fun for most gamers. One mistake and you're hurtling across the pavement. It's hard to do wheelies, it's hard to corner, it's hard to recover, especially when you're so disconnected from the actual experience. And games like Grand Theft Auto or Cyberpunk just would not be any more fun if the motorcycle physics were realistic. It's fun to do wheelies, it's fun to slide at 100 miles an hour. It is not fun to turn into pink mist while hitting an oncoming van. Like when you're driving a car, you're sitting in a seat, you're stationary, you're controlling things with your hands, right? So a controller is not that much big of a difference, it's not that much of a disconnect. But on a motorcycle, you lean with your whole body to turn. I'm not saying that a sim with a steering wheel and pedals and shifter isn't obviously superior than a controller, but it's not drastically that dissimilar either. As the 20 teens come to a close and we enter into the roaring 2020s, I look at all the progress we've made with these racing sims, and I cannot help but feel sad and maybe a little neglected that we haven't achieved the same with motorcycle sims. I still look at those arcade bikes that you lean with lust, and I can't help but sit on them when I find myself in an arcade, even in my 30s. There's just something about these games that I've always loved, and I think, why not, you know? A proper sim takes up a lot of space already, right? Especially a full motion one. There is obviously a lot more to it than that. Movement, feedback, gyroscopes, you need the extra room to lean to. It all adds up pretty quickly, especially to an already small and niche market. The car community built better tools, better mods, and a better community around racing sims. They made it fun and accessible, but the motorcycle scene, it just never got the same love. Maybe it's because it's harder to simulate, maybe it's because it's harder to market, or maybe, just maybe, motorcycles are meant to be enjoyed in real life and not behind some screen. And no matter how much you tweak the physics, how pretty you make the game look, or how good that digital bike sounds, they won't be able to match that raw feeling that you get with a simple controller. Maybe one day they will, but until then, I'll just keep leaning into turns IRL, you know? Waiting for a game that finally gets it right. I'll close on this. I've talked about this for a long time, so if this video gets enough love, I'll commit to building my own racing sim for motorcycles. Full-blown feedback with leaning and a tutorial on how to do it, or at least show you how I did it. I've seen some pretty cool homemade ones and even some like really hardcore professional ones too. I have a few people and contacts around me that can help me do it. They can help me accomplish this. So that's why if you want to see it happen, I just need you to like the video. I just got to know that it's financially worth it for me to put in the effort. It's something that you guys want to see. This video, it took a lot of effort. I worked on it for about 3 weeks. A lot of editing, a lot of research went into this. So if you want to see me do more videos like this, I got a list of videos like this I want to do with video games and movies and motorcycles. So let me know. All right, this is normally where I would do some sort of big elaborate ad, but over the last couple of days, I've been getting my ass kicked by some MS stuff. It is what it is. So here's what I'll say, just to end the video out. This video is all about motorcycles, and if you like motorcycles and you want a motorcycle, I'm giving away one. I'm giving away a custom Honda Magna bobber that I'm building myself for you guys. I got an update video of that coming very soon. We got some really cool handcrafted stuff coming on with that, and if you want to enter to win, all you got to do is go to my website, lingenfeltercustoms.com. Link is in the description, and every dollar you spend on the website equals 1 entry for the bike. And yeah, that's all I got, man. I'm exhausted. This video took a very long time to produce, and on top of just getting my butt kicked by some overexhaustion. So thank you guys for watching. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Are you in the shot? What are you doing? I'm making a video. You're hanging out with me. I cannot stand you, Harper. Is that good? It's right where I'm filming. You heifer. She's sitting on my foot, this bitch.